Thanks for having me.
Former senator, now consultant, Tom Dempsey, first time on the show on the panel, so thank you very much for coming to this half.
My pleasure. Good to be here with you, Scott.
Kevin Stamps, political operative, rising blood of Kansas City. We're very glad to have you over here. Thanks for coming.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
And Representative Jeff Roeder will be no stranger to our viewers. The book is out. Let's see the cover of the book.
Thanks,
Afghanistan, the war on police.
Thanks for the shameless plug, Scott. I appreciate it.
We dropped it in there. We had to get you here somehow. Now that you're CNN famous and stuff. So give me the cliff notes on the book.
Well, this is law enforcement's story, not meant to tell the story from any other perspective. I spent the last year and a half trying to set the record straight on what happened in Ferguson, and this is just about the cop's eye view of Ferguson, and really also about the broader national conversation that we never had about policing in America and race relations in America.
And it seems to continue to be in the news, that the topic goes on and on.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like we're in a new era, and the law enforcement changed forever on August 9th when Michael Brown was shot and killed. And I think we can move forward from that, and we can make some great advancements as a country. But we have to be honest about what happened that day, and until we are, we're locked in a really bad cycle. And
folks can get it on Amazon.com, right?
Amazon, Kindle.
Makes a Christmas gift, right?
iTunes, as of today, or my website, www.thewaronpolice.com.
Nice. Yeah. Speaking of another war, Representative Kolkmeyer, the Republican primary seems interesting. You see statewide candidates like Jay Ashcroft. He loves all four of them. Do you have a favorite amongst the four?
Well, I think Peter Kinder, Lieutenant Governor Kinder, has a definite edge up with his name ID. But I think Catherine Hanaway is definitely one to keep an eye on. She's working it hard. She really has a good grassroots organization going.
And who would have thought 9 months ago she'd have the least drama of any campaign?
True.
Interesting.
Yes.
Kevin, does so this week it came out that a former campaign manager for Lieutenant Governor Kinder, the reports were on there's some money missing. Does this feed into a narrative about the lieutenant governor, that there's always some kind of drama around, or is this just a blip we're all going to forget about?
I think it does. Last time he tried to run, he was plagued by problems. This time, he's just getting off the ground, and immediately there's more problems. I think it also drives a bigger narrative and conversation that we need to have about ethics reform in this state and contribution limits and how we track and report all of that.
Gotcha. Jeff, is this something that goes on, or is this forgotten about?
I think it's better to have this happen this far away from Election Day for Peter. I think it hurts him, as Kevin said, because it does sort of cobble into the criticisms that we've heard about Lieutenant Governor Kinder in past elections.
Senator Dempsey, you've picked a favorite in the race. This is something that could conceivably happen to a lot of different candidates. Does this feed into a negative narrative about the Lieutenant Governor, or is this something that'll be gone and forgotten?
To Jeff's point, I think that it came out this far in advance. It's certainly something that Lieutenant Governor Kinder can move on from.
Sure.
But when you're, in the different parts of the state, you want to be talking about why it's important for you to lead the state, whether it's on criminal justice or education or economic development. And so the more time you're talking about campaign finance issues within your own campaign, then the less you have to talk about these things that really affect people's lives.
The candidate who you've supported, Catherine Hanaway, she had a pretty tumultuous start to the year, but has sort of pushed through. And now, there's no reason she couldn't win the race, like any of the four.
Yeah, when I've been on your show before, mentioned my support for Catherine, and that's, I think, what you get with Catherine Hanaway. She's an extremely hard worker, and that means she puts in the effort day in and day out. And there are going to be little hiccups along the road, but in the conversations I've had with friends about who looks good and who maybe doesn't look as good during debates, I've always heard positive remarks about Catherine's performance.
Kevin Stamps, as a Democratic operative, is there one of the four who you really want to run against, and is there one who you'd just as soon not run against?
Yeah, I think a lot of Democrats are worried about Eric Greitens. He was relatively unknown, and he's been able to
He can raise the money.
raise a lot of money, and he's gotten a lot of traction very fast. He's got a great background and biography, and I think it's very tough for him to come out of that primary, but he could be someone who could give
You had a big
the
smile
Attorney
on
General,
your face when you heard the recorded phone call of him, and that was, as a Democratic operative, that's got to be just like candy. Sit back and hear two Republicans going at it like that.
It speaks to the trouble he'll have getting out of the primary and all the way through the general election, because it's it shows his inexperience in campaigning. That he would do something like that. This kind of thing is commonplace now. These microsites, thrown up by outside parties attacking candidates, and just that he would make the call.
And he kind of had to see this coming, right? I mean, it's not like no one was going to attack him. I mean, he had to assume when he filed this was what was going to happen.
Yeah. I've not been a candidate myself. These guys all have been before. I think, everyone says you got to be ready for it, be prepared for it. Guys like me telling you it's coming, and you think you're ready, and you never are.
It's Representative Colmeyer. It's different when it's your name, right? When they're on TV talking about your secretly taped phone call and how you got angry. It's a different thing.
Or you see that mailer that came out.
Yeah, that cutting mailer.
Yes.
Speaking of, we had Attorney General Koster on the show last week. It seems like the biggest problem for the Republicans in general, whether it's Greitens or Kinder, Hanaway, John Bruner, is that there's a lot of Republicans that aren't terrified by Governor Koster. How do you beat him? I mean, what do you do to knock him down and beat him after the primary's over?
Well, I heard your show, and Ryan Johnson pretty well probably summed it up right. When he was a Democrat, when he was a Republican, he really wasn't a Republican. And now that he's a Democrat, he's really not a Democrat. He's a political operative. So anyway, that's...
So he didn't want to be an opportunist, what you're saying?
Opportunist, that's for sure.
Tom Dempsey, what is Chris Koster going to hear?
Well, I think you're going to see efforts to tie him to the national party.
Sure. That's been very successful in Missouri and all over the country.
Sure. And so to the extent that the political consultants can do that, it'll have traction. It's very important in state political races what the national mood of the country is. And so, are the winds blowing in his favor or against him come election time. So, I think how people perceive the parties at the top of the ticket is going to affect those races further down. Speaking
of races further down, Jeff Ford, a story broke this week about the Syrian issue's been all over the news. Sure. Donald Trump mostly, but in Missouri, the Republican candidate for Attorney General participated in a lawsuit suing the Arkansas law enforcement over a self-described American terrorist right to grow his beard longer and practice Islam. In Arkansas, they say you can't have a beard in prison in case you escape. You can quickly change your look and make it harder to capture. You're in law enforcement. Right. There's been already calls from other law enforcement that you can't be the top law enforcement officer if you're suing law enforcement. How does that sit?
Well, listen, if I ever had any aspirations to be the top cop in any state, I would have never taken a case defending a self-proclaimed American Taliban who stabbed a woman, stabbed his girlfriend, violently attacked a person, and now is taking all the way to the Supreme Court their argument that their religious freedom as a Muslim to grow a beard outweighs the interest of the state and the correction system in making sure that escapees are readily identifiable, that they can't hide contraband in their beard.
You're in law enforcement. Is that a real concern? Explain that to our viewers.
I'm really shocked. Holly won the case in the Supreme Court, and I'm really shocked that the court, particularly this court, would buy that argument that in balancing religious freedoms against the public safety needs of the state of Arkansas, that they would weigh it this way and weigh in favor of the person's right to grow a beard. I mean, that's shocking to me.
Representative Colmeyer, I think most folks are in favor of religious freedom, even if you're a Muslim. Some of the comments from Donald Trump, while popular in some quarters, probably a little far, but it's probably hard to explain that to a person in Odessa that you were advocating a guy should practice his Muslim faith in standing in opposition of public safety. How do you explain that?
You don't. You can't. It's very tough. probably this Syrian refugee issue's been my number one contact
Wow.
in since I've been in office. We've had a lot of top issues,
Yeah, it's
but
hard to say.
this Syrian refugee issue is over the top. It tops them all. And I think this deal with Holly is extremely problematic with him moving forward.
Tom, you've been somebody that me personally, a lot of other folks I've looked up to, is effectively winning elections and having judgment. This seems very hard to explain.
No, it's certainly not the thing that you want out there. It's not going to help him win the campaign, that's for sure. Which I doubt he was thinking about that time when he was
Sure,
representing
yeah.
him. I've got to be upfront and say that I endorsed Kurt Schaefer. So and I've got.
Probably feel good about that today, right?
Well, yeah, for a lot of reasons.
Yeah. Kevin Stams, there is something to be said. I mean, religious freedom is important, and a lot of folks are very cognizant of that fact when we talk about Christian religious freedom. This seems like more of a balancing test, and I had one person, when the story was posted, text me and go, "Can you believe this Republican Party? You can't stand up for Muslim religious freedom, or people say you should quit the race." Is this a fact of the balancing test is not being applied properly, or the Republican Party in Missouri may be too far out on a Trump type limb?
I think it's a little bit of both. There's a lot of inconsistencies here. I think he's an officer of the court, sworn to uphold the Constitution. Our Constitution says
Sure.
that everyone has a right to a defense in court, and it's not his job as an attorney to judge the rightness or wrongness of his case, but to represent him to his best ability. And I think it would be hypocritical for any other attorney to attack him on that issue, having taken the same oath to,
Well, I
to
think
do
we
the
both
same.
agree that's going to happen, right? I mean,
That's going to happen.
yeah.
There's no doubt
Yeah.
about it. I'm just pointing out, and maybe that would appeal to some of the voters that he talks to,
Will this be a big issue
on
in
a
July?
constitutional issue. I think it definitely will be. I think it's going to be a huge issue.
Jeff Order, is
for him.
this an issue in July?
Absolutely it is. And we're not talking about prayer or the guy having a Quran in his cell.
Sure.
We're talking about facial hair. And, you lose certain rights when you go into prison. And I think it's not unreasonable for the Arkansas Department of Corrections to regulate facial hair inside that institution.
Tom, is this an issue that's not just a December issue? Is this an issue that you'll see if the race plays out in Holly Files in July?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think with the kind of the dialogue that's happening in the country and the concern that many people have.
Especially inside the Republican Party.
Yeah,
like
it
Representative
absolutely
said.
plays into kind of when people are trying to get a better sense of where you're from and what you're about. I think it's a little episode in his life that tells a story.
Representative, is this something that we'll hear about up into and especially before voting starts in August?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, we will.
So kind of a fun thing. Wanted to start, this is our last show before the end of the year. I want to start with the issue of the year. Representative, you're in Jeff City. There's been a lot of issues this year. What's the one issue that sticks out in your mind this year?
Right to work.
Right to work. Will right to work come back this session?
I hope it doesn't, but it may.
Is this more of a posturing for 2017, whatever happens this year, this coming year?
That is possible, yes.
So maybe the biggest issue of the year, the one that caught your eye.
On this side of the state, it was the municipal court reform.
Yeah. So some of the North County cities got together and
Right.
sued. Do you think they'll be successful?
No, I don't.
And it's kind of funny how they ended up transitioning into going after grass tickets or blinds being off. I guess there's a bill now to address that issue. I assume that passes, right?
Yeah, Senator Schmidt has, I think, a follow-up bill, more cleanup language, and maybe working in some other areas where there's additional abuses. And there was a lot of effort put into that bill, not just by Senator Schmidt, but by many others, so that this law would be able to hold water when it went to court. And so I feel strongly about it, and they'll continue to strengthen it in the legislature.
Kevin, issue of the year, biggest issue you saw.
I think if there's anything that's been an overarching theme this entire year, it's been ethics issues and ethics reform from this. Since the Speaker's resignation, Senator LaVota over the summer, and now this campaign finance issues with Peter Kinder, I think that is a big issue, and we need to look really hard at.
Is Peter Kinder's situation an ethics issue?
I think it is.
I mean, what is the ethics issue about that?
I think that we play loose and fast here with our money, the reporting requirements.
Well, that could have happened though any time. I mean, somebody could have. It's already against the law. What happened?
So here's a great example, though. You don't have to report any subcontractors in Missouri, and so campaigns, hire a consultant. The campaign needs something. The consultant says, "Oh, I can do that for you." They don't really do it themselves. They subcontract it out. None of that has to be reported. You don't know who's getting money where. They don't have any requirement to report back on who's doing that work. And so, obviously, money in his campaign account was getting funneled in places they didn't know or shouldn't have. But we'll see when all the facts come out. But I do think it's a bigger part of the problem of how much money we have and is filtering through with very little oversight, and what little oversight there is, there's not a lot of teeth to do anything about it over at the MEC.
That was an interesting issue of the year.
Well, I think in Missouri, I think you got to say it's race relations. We're in this post-Ferguson era, and then we have this huge deal up at the Columbia campus, the Mizzou campus, that both being national stories, really international stories that have captivated the attention of the world. I mean, we have to have a honest, frank conversation about race in this state and in this country, and I think we're focusing in the wrong area. I think that all these police reforms distract from the real issues that we need to address in this era.
Do you mean like with SB 5?
Well, I mean, not so much. SB 5 was a good bill. I think it needs to. There's some unintended consequences with it that they need to address. But, poverty, failing schools, other failing institutions in these communities, crime, drug addiction, these are all issues that plague urban areas, and we can't lie. I mean, blacks are disproportionately born into poverty in this country and in this state. And
maybe solving that's a bigger thing.
Well, and it's a tough issue, but I mean, to say that anything else is the biggest issue of the year is, I think you're missing the mark.
I'll try to raise you. There's one person that was a bigger issue than anything else. I think it was John Deal. John Deal came in at the start of the year saying, "I have no Ferguson agenda." He had all the national press there waiting. He said no Ferguson agenda was over. I think there'll be some ethics bill that ultimately gets signed by the governor and probably stems from that. And I think most of the legislative session revolved around his abilities as speaker, and then obviously the end was dramatic. Let's go back to person of the year. Glenn, who would you have as the person of the year?
Well, I'll just say negatively, it was Speaker Deal and Senator LaVota, and how they had to exit the building, and it was not good.
There'll be a whole host of people that remember that, obviously.
Unfortunately.
There'll be editorial pages that remember that, but there'll be also folks that look back and say if there's a football stadium in St. Louis, John Deal was the person behind that. He was huge behind that tax cut. There were the congressional map. There's a litany of accomplishments. It'll be interesting to see if the editorial pages write history. It'll be one way. If other folks do, it'll be interesting to see how they balance that. Senator Dempsey, person of the year.
Well, as the most interesting person this year, I'd have to say
The Dos Equis man?
No, but
Not bad.
Think about that. No, I'd have to say Donald Trump. Whether you like him, what he has to say, or you don't like what he has to say, everybody is reacting to when he makes a comment, and so it's really been his stage for the last several months, and highly controversial. You talk to a lot of people that their thought is, listen, I admire him because he says what a lot of people think but won't say. But he also goes too far, I think, in his comments. And
I think we might have seen that. Even his best supporters say, a religious tester in the country is too far.
Yeah, and I think when you're looking at the leader of what I believe is still the greatest country in the world, that leadership spot is tremendously important.
Person of the year.
I'm going to have to agree with Senator Dempsey. Donald Trump has been driving the conversation
He does.
this entire year, and I don't think anyone expected that. I expected him to take off the
You're
way that
saying
he
it was
has.
huge.
Exactly.
Jeff Roto, Person of the Year?
Well, if Donald Trump's going to be our next president, we need to bring back powdered wigs because that head of hair he's got is horrendous. I mean, I got to tell you, I think it's still Barack Obama. His swan song and his departure, I think, is
Sold more guns,
really,
elected more Republicans than anybody ever, right?
Well, exactly. I mean, he still is the centerpiece of the news, and Donald Trump is getting all this attention because he's talking so much about Barack Obama.
And we'll have to leave it there for this year on This Week in Missouri Politics. Our most important folks are our viewers. Thank you so much to KTVO, KRCG in Mid-Missouri, KBSI in South Missouri, and KDNL. Thank you so much to Avatar. Helped us. First Rule and Rob Glessner have been great for us, and more importantly, Tom Tipton from ABC here in St. Louis. Thank you very much. We appreciate especially all of you watching, and we'll see you next year.